Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Brenna and I are really excited to dive into everything AI and fundraising today. So we thank you all for taking a little bit of your time to come and learn a little bit more about it. Before we dive in, Brian and I are just going to introduce ourselves. So we are here today on behalf of Keela. In a nutshell, Keela is a donor management and fundraising platform that brings together all of the tools and features that fundraisers need to succeed. Keela is also a certified B Corp, meaning that we prioritize people over profits, and we are driven by a deep commitment to social and environmental responsibility. And even though Bryna and I are working for Keela now, Bryna and I are also fundraisers. So I myself spent about 10 years within the nonprofit sector, working specifically in fundraising, primarily in peer-to-peer and in sponsorship. But I've also kind of dipped my toes into diversifying revenue streams, building fundraising pipelines, and really that strategy development behind sponsorship and peer-to-peer.
Thanks, Meredith. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for the great introduction, and thank you all for attending. So, same with Meredith. I work for Keela and the VP of Growth and Marketing. But again, as Meredith mentioned, I come from the nonprofit sector. So, all of the questions that you are facing, the challenges and opportunities that you see on a day-to-day basis, Meredith and I have been in your shoes, and we absolutely understand what you're going through. So it's really exciting to be able to talk to you from that experience. So with that said, ask your questions. Again, whatever questions we don't get done or answered during the presentation, there will be a live Q&A, and we will be sure to message everybody after this presentation if we don't get to your questions today. Okay, so today is all about AI for the nonprofit sector. The AI advantage, how nonprofits can rise to the top using AI. We're going to talk about what is AI for nonprofits. We hear about this, I'm sure all of you on all your social posts and your feeds and communications, your dinner parties. What is it and what is it for nonprofits? Key benefits of AI specifically for the nonprofit sector. Considerations when adopting AI. I think it's really important that we provide you as much information as we have to be able to tell you what to consider when using and adopting AI. What tools are at your disposal for fundraising, and then we're going to have our Q&A.
And before we kind of jump in, we want to start today by first exploring the relationship between AI and fundraising, which is a journey that we at Keela have been on for many years now. And with so much changing and so much happening in the world today, the reality is the circumstances of our donors are changing. And traditional giving patterns are on the move, and we're seeing things that we've never seen before. We're in the midst of the largest transfer of wealth in human history, with about 30 trillion being passed down over the next 30 years. And as we're starting to see baby boomers age out, a large part of their inheritance is going to their children, many of whom are in their 20s, 30s, and 40s right now. And these are your current and future donors. And beyond that, technology is exploding at what probably feels like a dizzying rate for a lot of us. 15 years ago, many nonprofits were just getting their first donation page online. And that was a big step for a lot of organizations. And looking back, you probably can't imagine operating without those pages now. So this is the direction that AI is heading. And it's going to become more and more common to the point where we won't really know how we lived without it anymore. And there are even ways right now that you're already using AI in your day-to-day life that you may not even realize. Oops, sorry, there we go. On a daily basis, algorithms and AI are informing our choices. So from what we see on our social media feeds, to the driving directions we get from our smartphones, to the TV shows that are suggested to us on Netflix, AI is part of our lives, whether we like it or even whether we realize it or not. And for fundraisers, if we don't adopt the potential of artificial intelligence, our organizations are going to be left behind, or at least fundraising at a disadvantage. So let's think back for a second, and what do you think happened to nonprofits that resisted the internet? Some of them eventually gave in, had to scramble to kind of build an online presence, or they continued to resist and potentially, we didn't hear from them again. And that's what brings us to kind of what we want to go into today. So our goal today is to help you understand some of the concepts behind AI in fundraising just a little bit better and show you some of the ways that it can support your day-to-day work.
Okay, so let's get into it by first defining exactly what we mean when we talk about artificial intelligence and machine learning. And again, I'd love for you to write in the chat if you have any ideas, what you think, what is your understanding of AI and machine learning. I'll start talking, but again, I'd love to, just get everybody's opinions and thoughts. ChatGPT, yes, that's part of it. So artificial intelligence, or AI for short, is the ability for a computer to perform tasks that would typically require human intelligence and cognition. So it's the process of using a computer that automates tasks previously only done by human beings. Hopefully that makes sense. So while AI is the broad term to describe computer algorithms automating various functions and tasks, the underlying process is actually that we use it in our work. And what Keela uses is actually machine learning. And machine learning is a subfield of artificial intelligence. Has anybody come across machine learning? Know what it is? Let me know. Well, machine learning, again, is defined as the capability of a machine to imitate intelligent human behavior. So what do we mean? Machine learning enables AI-powered systems to perform these complex tasks that in a way is similar to how humans solve problems. So through machine learning, computers can find trends that would otherwise potentially have gone unnoticed. And machine learning actually gets smarter with every interaction. So what do we mean by that? So how do AI power systems work, and what do they mean for you as fundraisers? Anybody have any ideas? Write them in the chat. We'll try and pick them out in a bit. Okay, I like to use this example. When you look at a single donor's profile in whatever CRM you use, for the sake of this example, we used Keela. You, as the human, everybody on this call, can probably make a pretty quick decision on what to do with this individual donor, right? By looking at one record, you can probably determine what you should say, what amount to ask for, potentially what campaigns they should be a part of, what they shouldn't be a part of. You know that for a major giver, you don't want to ask them to come to your volunteer event, or vice versa. You know, as humans, what you should and shouldn't communicate with these donors based on looking at their record and their information. Machine learning emulates your ability to do that, but on a way bigger scale. Yes, chatbots, we're going to get to that as well. Now, with that bigger scale, they look at data points at a magnitude that we as human beings simply can't imagine. It takes what you as a human interpret from that one record, and it presents that information for you for every single donor record in your database within minutes. Minutes. Can you imagine? The machine is able to make predictions for thousands of donors instantly while analyzing millions of points of data in the process. So for example, it can predict donor behavior and even know how your donor might respond to your appeals. So the machine might tell you, don't message in the summer. They're never opening their emails. They're always away, because we can see that this person never opens email in the summer, but only in the winter. Again, the machine can look at this and communicate that for a variety of your different donors. And machine learning models actually get smarter over time, both by making predictions and learning simultaneously. And meaning that the more information that you use as inputs, the more accurate the outputs of the machine learning will get over time. Isn't that crazy? Or not?
So this is probably the meat and potatoes of why you all came here today, is the benefits and exploring it. But we wanted to give that a tiny step back to kind of help everybody understand what it is that's happening. Brian and I certainly aren't machine learning experts, but we are kind of fundraising and AI experts. So let's get into some of the key benefits of AI for nonprofits. So firstly, as we mentioned, AI-powered systems can predict donor behavior, and they do this by analyzing all of your historical data to find giving patterns and trends amongst kind of common donor types. So whether that is, recurring donors, major donors, lapsed donors, whatever that group may be. And once an AI-powered model has determined what similarities these donor groups share, it can analyze your entire donor database to uncover other donors or prospects with similar patterns and trends in their donation and interaction history. So by doing this, AI is actually surfacing the opportunities that you may never have even known existed within your data. And it's showing you, so for example, who you should be focusing your appeals on. Like Bryna said, if you're running a summer campaign, there's probably a whole bunch of people that don't open their emails in the summer or things like that. It can show you who has the highest potential to become a recurring donor, or even who is in danger of lapsing so that you can intervene before that lapse happens.
Secondly, AI-powered systems can increase efficiency and streamline your process. So these tools can also be seen as almost virtual assistants, a partner, not here to take over. And I think a lot of you might have some questions about, is AI going to take over my job? Is it going to be replacing me? Absolutely not. I think the incredible way to use it is, I see some people from Houston are using ChatGPT and experimenting. It's a way to really elevate your opportunities and use machine and AI learnings to do things quicker and faster and to support you. So this assistant can be trained to automate everyday tasks that normally would take you or fundraisers hours or days to complete. And through this automation or repetitive tasks like data collection, donor analysis, prospect research, personalized communications, it really can be done in a matter of seconds or minutes. And while not only saving time for your team, you can actually reduce the human error associated with some of these repetitive tasks and standardize the format in which the organization, you, analyze your data and articulate that within your systems. So of course, personalized communications is where, again, as somebody mentioned from Houston, that ChatGPT comes in. And again, if you haven't used ChatGPT yet, you have likely heard of it, and we're going to dive into it a bit deeper into this webinar. But if you haven't heard of it, you should check it out. ChatGPT is an AI tool, and it acts almost like a virtual assistant. Depending on the prompts that you enter, it can deliver information about what you're asking for, and it can write fundraising appeals, blogs for your site. It can build nonprofit operating strategy. It can give you new ideas and tips for creating fundraisers. It pretty much can do anything you can think of. And there's more on that shortly, but just kind of wanting to give you a quick update on what that looks like. But I do want to acknowledge, and I wonder if any of you on this webinar have any hesitations when it comes to innovative tools like these and the fear of replacing that human touch. So I want to make it clear that nothing can replace the human touch, but really this can only be tools to help assist you. And AI shouldn't be replacing anyone. Instead, they can and should minimize some of the administration and the burden that it takes you and your team away from connecting with your donors face to face, having those interactions that build those relationships on those personal levels.
AI can also help you prioritize donor stewardship. So through the use of predictive analytics within a database, which is kind of what we've been talking about so far, and being able to kind of understand more of your donors and predict their next move, AI can also facilitate the cultivation of stronger donor relationships by helping you prioritize donor stewardship. So this kind of technology works by uncovering who your engaged donors are, who your donors who are likely to give to specific appeals that maybe a fundraiser may have missed seeing. And it really enables us all to make more informed, data-driven decisions when deciding who to speak to and when and how. and who, could use a little extra love to prevent them from lapsing. AI can show you all of those things. So ultimately, AI, it kind of just helps take some of the guesswork out of fundraising, and it enables fundraisers like all of you to spend time speaking to the right donors, focusing on your campaigns, writing appeals, and targeting those that are most likely to give.
And then lastly, AI helps optimize donor engagement. I know a lot of you want to be able to increase that relationship management with your donors. And not only can AI help you identify your most engaged donors, but it can help you optimize your engagement with these donors when you do reach out. It can predict things like how much a donor is likely to give, the best way to reach out, and even what time of day to best engage donors. And if anybody on this call has looked at the latest 2023 giving annual statistics over the last year, is that a lot of donors are giving, individual donors are giving less. And that means that a lot of nonprofits are focused on those high potential givers. And what they're not communicating to or with is those middle to smaller donors who don't necessarily give as much. And that's because, and again, please communicate in the chat if this is something that you and your organizations focus on, but when you focus only on those people who give large amounts to make sure that they continue to give those, and those people give less, you're missing out on a large group of people. And using technology and AI can help you identify people who may live in areas where they're able to, who have given consistently over the years, even though it might be smaller amounts, but will help you identify and engage with donors that you might not necessarily even know who and how to communicate with. So it's really part of the everyday conversation, because we're seeing the data come out from the United States and Canada and North America on how individual giving is less and less each year, and how AI can help you find more donors that are already within your database.
So all of the benefits sound great, but there are some considerations to keep in mind before you kind of dive headfirst into the world of AI. So we want to cover some of those. I'm sure lots of you have questions about these kinds of things. So the first is, before using AI, you should carefully consider the ethical implications. So this includes ensuring that the AI systems that you're interested in are designed and implemented in a way that aligns with your organization's missions and values, that they respect privacy and data protection, that they avoid bias and discrimination, and that they maintain transparency and accountability. So I'm going to mention ChatGPT again here. We reference ChatGPT a lot because I feel like, I don't know if anybody agrees with this, but I feel like ChatGPT was kind of the thing that like exploded this AI, everybody's eyes on AI for a bit, and it's an incredible tool. But when you type anything into ChatGPT, you're helping it learn. So this is going back to machine learning, meaning that if you enter confidential information about your donors, the system will learn that, retain it, and possibly provide it to somebody else. So ChatGPT, it's an incredible resource for writing emails, social media posts, looking for ideas, all of those great things. But you should be exercising caution if you plan to use it for anything that involves proprietary information. So anything like prospect research maybe isn't the place to use ChatGPT, but it has a ton of other amazing benefits.
Another consideration is around data quality and availability. So AI systems heavily rely on data for training and mentioned, and that means that you should evaluate the quality and availability that you have or you need to collect. I don't want you to think that your data needs to be perfect. Again, coming from this, there's no such thing as a perfect database and perfect data, but perfect doesn't exist. But the more reliable your data is, the better the outcome is. And what I mean by that is, imagine a nonprofit that aims to engage a large group of donors for their fundraising campaigns. I'm sure people here can relate to that. They decide to implement an AI-powered donor engagement platform. The AI system uses data from various sources, such as social media, past donation history, website interactions, to identify the potential donors and tailor personalized communication strategies. So in this scenario, considering data quality and availability becomes crucial. The nonprofit must ensure that the data collected from donors is at least up to date and relevant. So in terms of ensuring there's no duplicates, so Keela has deduplication tools that you can use to ensure that you're cleaning that data appropriately, because you want to avoid sending communications to incorrect email addresses or outdated contacts. Again, using tools like Keela has to be able to do that easily and quickly. You want to ensure that you evaluate the availability of your data from different channels to have that comprehensive view of each donor's preferences and engagement patterns. And having that data from various sources will enable the AI system to create meaningful interactions and identify the most effective engagement strategies for these donors. So hopefully that answers some questions in relation to what do we mean by data quality. And it's not necessarily having everything perfect, but ensuring that you at least have up-to-date contact and pieces of information.
Something that we hear a lot at Keela is like, I don't have perfect data. So how am I going to do this? And like Bryna said, like perfect data doesn't exist. I've never worked at a place that has perfect data. I don't think Bryna has either. So if you're worried about the quality of your data, please don't let that scare you from starting to kind of dive into these things and learn more about them. So the third consideration is around transparency and explainability. So as a fundraiser, I imagine that you try to be as transparent as possible with your donors. That is, an important way that you are building trust and keeping your donors coming back. This also applies for using AI. So especially when the decisions made by AI tools could come with consequences, as we kind of are covering some of those considerations right now. But it's important to have a general understanding of how whatever AI tool you're using delivers the results that you're getting. You don't need to know every single little piece of information about how AI works and machine learning. No one would expect you to, but you should have a general understanding so that you can be prepared to provide explanations to your stakeholders if necessary about why and how you're using the AI tools that you have chosen. Especially now when I mentioned like ChatGPT, there's a lot of eyes on AI. There's a lot of different opinions around AI. So as long as you're prepared to have these conversations with your stakeholders, then you should be good.
Another consideration to consider is risk management. So it's important for you as fundraisers and those in the nonprofit sector to identify and mitigate potential risks. And this includes addressing issues such as data security, privacy breaches, unintended consequences, and the impact of human workers or beneficiaries. So again, this is ensuring that you're partnering with tools and systems like Keela that has privacy built in, that has it's been tried, trued, and practiced with a bunch of other nonprofits. It's been developed by developers. It has the appropriate information within it that isn't going to be breaching any privacy laws. But you want to make sure that when you are using these systems that you check on who you're allowing to log into the system and who has access to the information that you're seeing, again, to ensure that you're considering all of these risks before you go ahead and just start using all of these technologies.
Okay, and then the final consideration that we have here is regulatory compliance. So when we decide to use AI in fundraising work, it's important to stay informed about the relevant laws, regulations, and ethical guidelines related to it. So AI is really having its moment right now. These regulations will likely evolve and grow in the very near future. So again, like Bryna mentioned, sourcing the tools that comply with legal and ethical frameworks, it really just sets your organization up for success, and it ensures that you are operating within the boundaries of the law and maintaining the ethical standards that are, so important for you and for your community.
And again, if people are questioning even tools like ChatGPT, just ensure that what you're putting out there, as Meredith mentioned, isn't private information, and that whoever is putting in the information, everybody else can see that who has the same login. So just ensure that you're comfortable with who has access to it. So now that you have a good understanding of the benefits and considerations, I want to dive into some tools that exist that could be enhancing your actual fundraising efforts. So let's dive in. Again, ChatGPT, we've said it probably 100 times. I've seen the chat, a bunch of people are mentioning it, like Nikki as well. So we want to make sure which tools that we frequently use at Keela that have had an incredible amount of value. So you can use it to create custom donation appeals. You can ask it to write an emotional appeal, a motivating appeal, or anything else in between that would resonate with your donors. You can use it to draft social media posts by prompting it with information or basic information about what you'd like to say to your donors. You can use it to segment your donors. Endless ways to segment your donors. And if you're not sure, ask ChatGPT. It can also help you with donor stewardship. Yes, can you believe it? You can prompt it to write thank you email templates that you can then customize for your donors, or even write phone scripts if you're hosting some kind of event or program. One of your most obvious uses for ChatGPT is email templates, the amount of time that you will save. It does a really good job of writing basic templates that you can then edit and send out. You can use it for impact sharing by asking it to generate impact statements or even impact reporting. You can plug in metrics, images, and videos. You can also use it to generate new ideas. If you're trying to mix it up and your fundraising initiatives are kind of running low, ask ChatGPT to give you some new ideas. It does not have direct access to the internet or any external databases when you type in a question. So instead, just so you all know, ChatGPT actually relies on the knowledge and information that it's been trained on during its development. So you can't ask it for something live or something that happened yesterday. It's a language model trained on the largest data set containing a diverse range of text from books, articles, website, and other resources. And I believe the last I've read was that it was updated in September of 2021. So if you're looking at things from 22, 23, it might not yet be in there. So when you ask a question, ChatGPT uses its understanding of language patterns and context from its training data to generate that response to you, and it does not actively search for new information or browse the web for real-time answers. So as a result, sometimes you may find its responses are limited, but there's a ton of web courses and classes out there on how to teach people what kind of or what way to actually ask ChatGPT a question that will generate the best response that is needed for you and your business, which is pretty cool.
We also have, I'm just going to jump in for one sec, because we, since you're all registered for this webinar, we've actually put together a resource for all of you that is a whole bunch of prompts for fundraisers. So whether you're a major donor fundraiser, a peer-to-peer fundraiser, whatever area of fundraising that you are responsible for, or all of them, probably there's lots of people here who are doing all of it. We've curated a whole list of prompts that you can basically copy and paste into ChatGPT and start to play around with them and start using it.
And we're going to give you some examples now. So we want to show you an example right here is that we asked ChatGPT to write a brief but compelling major gift solicitation letter that featured some of the goals, accomplishments, and funding needs of an organization. You can see here that it has returned a draft of that letter, and you can use the term draft very intentionally because anything that you plan to use from ChatGPT should not be taken directly from the system and sent to a donor or a prospect or anything. You really want to read it. You want to ensure that you're personalizing it, that you're adding your content, your information. This is why, again, we say it will never replace the human. It is an opportunity to make your work go by quicker and easier and use this as a draft template. So you should be highlighting and customizing for each of your types of donors. Another example, as you can see on the screen, is that we asked ChatGPT to give us 10 new fundraising ideas for nonprofits to try in 2023. And that's exactly what it gave us, some new opportunities. And if you're not satisfied with these ones, you can ask it for another 10. Again, these are really just ways to utilize the internet in a different way, or instead of having a conversation or calling up somebody or going to a library and looking at ways in which people have done things, you're able to use the tools that are available to us at this time and place to be able to help you and your organization find new ways, or just even get your own creative brain flowing. And then in this final example, we asked it to write a social media post for some peer-to-peer fundraisers so that they can use it on their social channels and encourage their network to give and donate. You can see that ChatGPT even put in the emojis for you. So again, there are so many ways that this tool can be used by fundraisers. It's free and you have nothing to lose. Again, as long as you read the content, ensure that it resonates and makes sense, but it's almost as a quicker way to create a draft or a template, and then it's easier to edit than it is sometimes to start from scratch. And again, that's not everybody. Some people might want to do this from scratch. We're just showcasing the opportunities that are available for you as fundraisers, as we understand, again, being in that sector, in that space, that sometimes time is way too short and there's a lot of things that each of you are doing, and probably more than just one job. So this hopefully will help.
Okay, so the next AI tool that can support your work is automation. So we don't always think about automation as AI, but I bet a lot of you are already using it. And automation can look like a few things. So it can be your automatic gift acknowledgement and tax receipting. So when someone makes a gift through your online donation page and receives an instant thank you and tax receipt, that is automation, saving you a lot of admin time for your fundraising and donor services teams. AI-powered automation can also support with fraud detection. So AI algorithms can be used to automate the detection and prevention of fraudulent activities in industries like banking, insurance, e-commerce, things that you are probably involved in some capacity. And machine learning models can actually analyze large volumes of data, identify patterns, and flag suspicious transactions or behaviors, which can help you mitigate the risks of, having online donations as an option. It can help you improve security, and really a whole bunch of other things to keep your organization safe. And finally, automation can also help with donor journeys, which is something Brenna and I love talking about. I feel like we talk about donor journeys on every webinar we do, regardless of the topic, because it's so cool. But with automation, you can set up different communication journeys that you want to send your donors on based on how they're interacting with your organization. So for example, you could set up a welcome journey for every donor that is giving to you for the first time. So you basically set up a journey that says, immediately after a new donor makes a gift, they receive a thank you letter and a tax receipt. And then 3 days later, they receive an email with more information about what your organization is working on. And then a week later, they receive an email with a story from your community. And then they end up in your newsletter mailing list or something along those lines. But it's something that you can set up. Rest assured that your donors are hearing from you without too much manual work. And automated welcome journeys have actually been proven to increase donor retention by about 13%. So they're definitely worth looking into.
And then another form is chatbots. Nonprofits are using chatbots to act as support for teams and communities, and chatbots can be tailored for different pages. So if you go to the next slide, Meredith, we can even show you how an organization called Kids Help Phone in Canada uses chatbot on its website. So Kids Help Phone is a 24/7 mental health support service, and you can see that they have a chatbot on their homepage to set up to help their website visitors navigate their new website design. So they can also use it to provide quick information about what to do if a youth is in crisis or lands on a page, and offer talk to somebody or urgent help buttons within the chatbot so that they can access the services that are needed. So it's really important that you can use these for a variety of different purposes.
Okay, and then finally, the last AI tool that we're going to look at before we get into Q&A, they're prospect research tools such as prospect scoring, predictive analytics, natural language processing, and data mining and analysis. I know that sounds like a mouthful, but I'm going to break it down for you here. So prospect scoring and predictive analytics. So we have kind of been referencing this along the way, but these AI algorithms can assess historical donor data and use predictive analytics to identify, for example, major gift prospects that are living in your database. By analyzing past giving patterns, wealth indicators, demographic data, and other relevant factors, AI can actually assign a prospect score that indicates the likelihood and capacity for a significant donation. And this helps you prioritize your efforts and focus on the most promising prospects. So when I say a score, I actually mean like a score, like 1 to 100. Out of 100, Brian Dillman has a 75% chance of becoming a major donor, for example. So you can actually pull a list of all those people, sort them from highest score to lowest score, and really prioritize your prospect research and your outreach. The next is natural language processing. So these AI tools can actually analyze text from various sources. So things like news articles, annual reports, social media posts, and they extract valuable insights about potential donors. So natural language processing can actually identify sentiments, connections, affiliations, and a whole bunch of other relevant information that give you a deeper understanding of your prospects' interests, motivations, and connections. And then the last one is data mining and analysis. So we have, again, kind of touched on this, but AI can help you extract valuable insights from vast amounts of data. So publicly available information, social media data, financial records. These algorithms can analyze this data to identify patterns and indicators of a prospect's capacity and even their inclination to give. So that was a whole bunch of information that we just threw out at you about AI. I hope it got you excited, but we're here. So send through some questions. I think Heather's going to come back and help us out with the Q&A, but we're ready to answer anything that you have.
Wonderful. Well, if you had a chance to look in the questions module, there's a lot of them, myself included. I'm a newbie to this. So I wrote down a few things, and then, both of you, Meredith and Brenna, feel free. You can see the questions. Just jump in, go in there if you see one. But when I saw some of the questions coming in, one thing that was clear was I think there was some confusion about where this data was coming from. Like, how does it find out this person will give in winter? How does it find out they prefer snail mail over email? And just clarifying that this is the nonprofit's own data. And they're using the CRM, whatever tool they're using is using their own data to figure out those data sets and those recommendations, right? It's not just falling from the sky, or you're not scraping Twitter or Facebook, right? It's literally the nonprofit's own data. Can you explain that process a little bit more?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I can start, and Brianna, feel free to jump in here. But yes, it is your own data. So one of the ways that at least we at Keela see AI as being a huge benefit for fundraisers is that ability to uncover opportunities from the people that are already in your database. So the AI will actually scan a donor's giving history, when they open your emails, any kind of interaction that they have with your organization, when they give, how much they give, and it actually can combine it. So that data lives there, and then it can combine that data with some external data such as demographic information. So it'll say people between the ages of 35 and 45 typically make this amount of money, meaning that they have this much expenses, meaning they're capable of giving this much, and combine that with your giving history to create things like custom asks based on that donor's information, and the best time to give, how they like to be contacted, all of those kinds of things.
And this is, again, what pairs nicely with AI and machine learning and tools like Keela, is that this is not going to be 1000% accurate. Just like how you would look at a donor record and say, oh, this person usually gives $50, I'm going to assume that they're going to give $50 again. You have no idea if this person's been laid off. You have no idea if this person's gotten massive promotions and won the lottery and can give more or less. So it's an assumption based on all the data points that this information is being fed, and therefore it is the nonprofit and the fundraiser who has to go out and then activate it. And the more and more the fundraiser does it and confirms that these things and these suggestions are right, the better in which the AI is provided and the more accurate it becomes.
Okay, wonderful, good answer. So I don't normally do this, But I have to say, I saw screenshots of your nonprofit intelligence on Kila's website like 3 or 4 years ago. And when I saw that you were doing this before we were even talking about this in the public space, I've been waiting for this webinar literally like 3 years. So the question is, like in the back of my mind, I knew this technology was there. Kila was pioneering it. What percentage of nonprofits actually have access to a CRM, or even that are doing this on a daily basis? So I'm thinking World Wildlife Fund, of course, maybe some middle-sized nonprofits, but are small nonprofits starting to get on board and understanding that these tools are even available, or this way to crunch data is available?
I mean, yes. So 100%. And what's really cool about Kila is that Kila does not charge 1,000 times more because we offer these unique tools within our platform. It is, again, as Meredith mentioned, we're a B Corp and we, prioritize people, planet, and profitability in the same length. So if you go to our pricing page, it does not include or influence the price, and therefore we have hundreds and thousands of tiny, small startups, middle-sized and large nonprofits using Kila and taking advantage of these tools. And the pandemic has really pushed these nonprofits even more so to be able to take advantage of this, as they've had to unfortunately lay off people, or people have been leaving at a higher rate than normal, and that the AI and the technology needs to be there in order to help support that fundraiser who has that plate that's overflowing and so full.
Okay, great. And just speak, there were a couple questions about whether it's Kila or they're using another platform, where this data is being stored, is it secure? It's cloud technology, of course, but like, what's going on with security? Or if we're going to be using this data in this way, can nonprofits and their donors feel like this data is secure, hosted on the cloud?
Yeah, we can only speak for Kila. Absolutely, that 1,000% it is 100% protected, or more than 100%, 1,000% protected, and we've got our privacy laws and all the information if any nonprofit is interested in asking us for those documentations. The information also lives depending on where the organization is. So if you're a Canadian organization, the information will live in Canada. If you're a US organization, the information will live in the US, and Australia in Australia. So again, we've got very, very strict rules on privacy, that this information isn't being shared with anybody else, and it is with the nonprofit. And once they leave, the information leaves, so that there's a ton of understanding that this information is the nonprofits, not the CRMs.
Okay, that's good. It's interesting, privacy law. It's like the law is finally catching up with the internet. It took 20 years, but it's just something, across the board, 5 years from now, privacy.
Great question.
Right. So let's, the $1 million question, and a lot of these questions are more advanced than, I even know how to ask. Like, I'm such a newbie to this. So one thing I was thinking about, and that a couple of people were asking, I don't know if ChatGPT has an API. So like, if you go into Kila or another tool and say, write this fundraising letter for me, or if they have to go to ChatGPT and then copy and paste it and tweak it and put it in to their email platform or their CRM. Do you know about that? Like, is it integrated into your donation forms, was one question. Is it integrated in the ability to write an email? And if so, what do you say about the fact that, where I'm a bit of a skeptic, is it's a little too easy, right? And it all starts to sound the same, the same sort of tone, the same robot-like, whatever, pun intended, language. So if it's integrated and we're all getting down to this one click, send email, write email, send it, what are your thoughts about the future of integrating, if possible, into such platforms, and two, how to just keep it to stand out from the rest?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, there was, maybe to answer the first part first, because I think there was 2 questions there about AI kind of in donation forms and then living within a CRM. So Kila's donation forms already do have an AI capability. It's called Smart Ask. So that means that any donor that has given to you before, if they land on your page, In behind the scenes, our machine learning is going to do exactly what we said, which is combine their giving history, their wealth indicators, and their demographic data to give a custom suggested giving amount. So it'll scan that information about me if I land on the donation page and say, okay, based on all this information, Meredith can probably give $100. So that is the amount that it will suggest. So it helps to alleviate any potentially leaving money on the table. And that is built into our donation forms. I don't know of a CRM yet that has kind of incorporated the ChatGPT function within the CRM. I'm not going to say that it is not coming. I'm not going to give anything away, but you know, I'm just going to drop that there in terms of if you're ever thinking about Keela. But I know that it will be coming. And in terms of things all kind of starting to sound the same, you will run into that with ChatGPT if you're using ChatGPT. So I would say, you know, right now it's external in ChatGPT that can be then brought into a CRM, but you will notice that things start to sound the same, which is why, again, we say it is a first draft. So it is, you know, something to get you started, something to kick it off, but that human touch of fundraising still isn't going away, right? It's there, it's important, and that is when it will come in to customize these appeals, you know, help you segment out maybe the donors that have a higher capacity to give, so you can spend more time personalizing those kinds of appeals. But yeah, it should be a first draft. I mean, I use ChatGPT all the time, and even I'm starting to notice, because I'm entering the prompts, some of the things are starting to sound the same because I'm not entering prompts that are that different. So, or the language that I'm using is the same, or the tone that I'm using is the same. So you will run into that, but that's why it's important to personalize still.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, oh gosh, there's so many questions here. You're gonna get, so Keela is going to get a list of all the questions, and if we don't get to them today, they will respond to them in due time. Going back to the writing part, just because I'm Gen X, I've been writing for 30 years. I did ChatGPT, and I tried the whole editing thing, and I'm one of the ones that found it more difficult. Like, I stared at the screen going, I can't edit this. This like messes with my brain. An emptier screen is easier for me to write because that's all I've ever done. Have you noticed those generational differences in your work with people? Like maybe a Gen Z millennial will be like, this is awesome, I love it. Whereas a Gen X or a baby boomer, just because of their experience, is like, whoa, I don't like this. And if so, how do you have those conversations in your workplace to bridge the gap between the generations?
I think it's also training. So sometimes it really all depends on your need. Do you need to write this quick and you're having trouble? If you're an individual who is used to writing things from a blank screen and it takes you no time at all, then maybe ChatGPT for that particular purpose isn't necessary. But for other people who don't get that, you know, ability to write super quickly from a blank page, sometimes I want to write an email to a donor and thank them for the amount that they raised, that they came to this last event, and I really want to make sure that it sounds heartfelt. Here's an email that I've written 2 years ago. Can you make it sound somewhat similar? So you don't necessarily have to just start from scratch, write it, whatever. Sometimes I'll write it and I'll say, can you read this and make it sound a little bit more professional? Can you read this and make it sound a little bit more relaxed? There's so many, again, there's classes and webinars on how to use it to your advantage and how to prompt it and what questions to ask. And so it might be training on your behalf on somebody who is in your shoes that might, you know what, I don't need it for this particular task because I'm quick, or I want to make sure that I don't say the same thing over and over, but I just need a couple of hints, and using your past emails or just some ideas to give ChatGPT, which again would be more unique because you're instructing it on how to write it based on what you want to hear and see.
Right, that's good advice. And again, I'm kind of going back, I'm seeing AI differently. So in this particular webinar, the discussion around using the data. So I thought your definition of machine learning was really excellent. It put on a light bulb for me, which is it's just processing your data. And instead of me, I remember in the old days, 20 years ago, like go through our database and see who the major donors are. And it literally did take days, right? And now
Yep.
you can push a button, or potential major donors are, and then we'd come up with a list, have a meeting, you can literally do that with the touch of a button now. I think that I'm having a hard time seeing any downsides to that. It's just good technology. It's using machine learning. I am seeing a lot of hesitation here in the ethics of something like ChatGPT. So long term, I was thinking about this morning with social media. Like, if I had known when I got on MySpace and when I first started Facebook and Twitter, which is now X, which makes me want to hit my head against the wall. If I had known where all of this was going, disinformation, mental health, and teenagers, I think if we could have seen into the future, maybe we would have done things a little bit differently. And I'm seeing this now, like the VC funding. I mean, there's so many AI startups. So I see the value. But what's your take? You're living and breathing this every single day. Clearly, the nonprofit intelligence side, using the data makes sense. And if it's the nonprofit's data, I don't see any privacy issues. But what about all the other stuff that's coming, right? That if we could see into the future for 10 years, maybe this is going to cause problems we haven't even considered yet. How do you suggest nonprofits have this conversation at work, and maybe where they can draw a line in this early experimentation instead of just, and I know this is a deep kind of evolved question, but you're the experts now, you're pioneering this. So the more darker side, the what could happen, and we have to acknowledge the fact that some of the best minds in the world right now are saying, wait, slow down. So what are your thoughts on not the nonprofit intelligence, the data management, but the content creation, and where AI could be going, good and bad? What's advice for nonprofits in having this conversation?
So my opinion is have the conversation, talk to your staff, find out who's comfortable, have conversations with your top fundraisers, have conversations with your volunteers and your board of directors. The downside is, twofold. It's like we cannot predict how this is going to affect people, but what we can predict is that if you're not able to do things quick and fast and personal, you're going to lose donors. We know of a bunch of nonprofits that have closed down. We know of donors that are, or of organizations that aren't raising what they need to raise, which means that their funding for their staff and their administration is going down. So it's almost like, what do you need to do and what do you have to do without breaking any ethical rules? And again, this is where we, and Meredith, I'm speaking on behalf of you, you can say your opinion, is where it's a helping hand. It's not taking what ChatGPT and what AI and machine learning is saying at face value. It's saying, wow, thanks for giving me this information. Now me as the person in charge is going to read it, is going to understand it, is going to add in what is important from my perspective as the human touch, and put in that information and ensure that it's not, embarrassing anyone or doing anything wrong. It's literally a helping hand to that fundraiser that has had 5 of their colleagues leave, that have had all of their donors say, I'm not giving to you because you're not telling me where my money is going. You're asking me to give $50. Don't you know I never give more than 10? That's like, do you not know me? So it's really just, it's a helping hand to be able to have those appropriate conversations. And again, this is where you talk to your staff and be like, when I email this donor, be like, I used the data to be able to pull this information to tell me about how much I should be asking you. Is this information correct? Having those open conversations. ChatGPT and AI and machine learning aren't in a bubble anymore. It's not for for-profits or nonprofits. It's for people in school who are retired, who are working, who are in the sector, non-sector. So I think it's okay as long as you communicate it, because if you're not using the tools that are available to you today, I think there's more consequences. And again, being in the nonprofit industry for 15 years or more, the nonprofit sector always is almost last to receive the money needed to be able to be on par with the rest of the world. And technology was one of those. We were always using hand notes and spreadsheets and not able to afford technology that has, during a pandemic, put a lot of nonprofits at a disadvantage. So in my opinion, it's worth a conversation to at least communicate it. You don't have to hide it because it's not a secret. And I think if you start from there, then you'll start to see how your community reacts.
Good
Yeah,
answer.
I would also add to that, like we covered a lot of AI tools and things today. That doesn't mean that you need to go back to your team and say, "Oh my gosh, we have to try all of these things right now." Like that is certainly not what we're saying. We understand that this is new, and sometimes new is challenging. Sometimes new can be a little bit intimidating, which is why we wanted to give that example of the internet right at the start. And it's, you know, it's I wish I could have been around and working in a nonprofit at the time where people were talking about getting on the internet for the first time and accepting donations online and all of the concerns and things that happened around that. And I would say, you know, if you still have those hesitations or you feel like people on your team have those hesitations, that's okay. Do your research, understand where kind of the areas of AI that you're the most interested in starting to dip your toes are, and do some research and reach out to Brian and I if you have any questions or concerns or you want to chat. Like we're happy to always have those conversations, and even if it's just helping you take that back to your team if you're kind of the AI advocate internally.
Great, thank you. I do have to throw in, I was around when nonprofits were first getting on the internet, and executive staff and board members were terrified of blogging. They were terrified.
Yeah, something that we do all the time now, and it was such a scary thing now. It's the way it's going. Yeah, it's the way we're headed with AI.
Yeah. So one person mentioned overarching this whole discussion was they're working up an AI policy for their nonprofit. Have you seen any like templates or kind of resources to like how your nonprofit can write an AI policy? Ever seen anything like that?
I haven't seen anything like that yet, but it is a
That's
great
how early
idea.
we are, right? That's
Yeah, I think it's, I love it. I think it's an amazing idea. And I think that for somebody to be thinking about that right now is great. I imagine probably because AI, it's not new, but you know, with things like ChatGPT, so many people are looking at it right now that, like I said earlier, the regulations and things will evolve quite quickly. So those policies, as long as they are kind of taking into account the evolution of these regulations and laws, it will be a very important document to have if you're going to be using it.
And, you know, going back to kind of the basics, so we talked about Keela, we talked about ChatGPT. Are there, one person's asking like, okay, where do I start? So beyond Keela, beyond ChatGPT, are there other AI tools that you're loving right now? One or two, like a startup, something that you found useful?
I mean, I can touch on a couple. There are lots out there. Well, one, we talked about automation. Automation is one of my absolute favorites just because of the ways in which it can lighten the load on fundraisers. And automation, you know, really has some limits, but not a lot. And there's so many things that you can automate that you may not have thought of. And then there are also lots of tools out there that you can get to generate images for you and generate videos and those kinds of things. And they may not all be free tools, but they're a really good place if you, I don't think I've ever worked at a nonprofit that had a graphic designer on staff. That work was always outsourced. And there are AI tools out there now that can help with some of that work too. I don't know, Brian, if you have others.
No, I think you said most of the ones that we both use, yeah.
All right, two more quick questions. So one, that automation subject, somebody looked earlier, what is automation? And I think there are so many small nonprofits that I am waiting for the webinar that is, here are 10 examples of automation, right? Or the blog post, something like that, which, so on a very basic level, somebody makes a donation, they automatically get a thank you email. What's another example of automation that maybe is not so commonly used, but really useful?
Meredith and I can run that next webinar for you.
Okay, it is the one I've been asking for 3 years. Nobody can give it.
Oh, we have tons. Okay, Meredith, you go.
Yeah, I mean, I would say so there's the gift acknowledgement. There is, like I mentioned, donor welcome journeys. You can set up automation that can help support your peer-to-peer events. So anytime somebody registers for your event, they get all of the information. You can actually set it up from, the point that they register until the point where the event is done and you're sending out a thank you, to automate every single touch point that you need with them along the way, whether it's sharing important logistical information, whether it's sending fundraising information. I love those journeys. Anytime you schedule a social media post, if you're using a tool like Hootsuite or something like that, that is automation. It's really there to help you do everything you can up front. It's almost like a set it and forget it. I try not to say forget it, because I don't know if any of you are like me that have sent an email that you were like, oh, I wish I had thought of it before that went out, and then I would have changed it or something like that. But it really is a set it, so you don't have to think about it as much.
Okay, awesome. Well, we are a minute over, so I'm going to go ahead and shut it down. The presenters will be sent a list of all the questions, so I don't know how long it'll take them, but clearly they know their stuff and got it together. So my response is my belief is they'll get to you pretty soon. The webinar has been recorded, and they will send a link to the recording as well as any relevant resources within 48 hours. Any last words before we shut down?
Thank you so much to Heather and Nonprofit Tech for Good, and to everybody who engaged and show up. And feel free to connect with Meredith and I on LinkedIn or on social, and we'd love to chat more about this and more.
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Thanks for the great webinar. Yay.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.